Welcome back, everyone, to Data Science for Everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about D3.js and their x-axes. Let's get started. So, in some previous videos, we had created up some bar charts and we had created up some axes, but we had never had them together. So, let's go on and create up a nice example that we have. And so, let me actually go on and cancel this out. So, we have up our basic boilerplate for our HTML. Okay, and today I'm not going to be using the onload. I'm just going to add in a script here in the body tag, and that's fine. And so let's go ahead and create a. First off, we're going to need some data, and let's just do something like 1, 2, 3. Just putting in some random data. Again, you guys can put in whatever types of data that you would maybe like as well. So this line here is going to initialize a nice data array, and it's going to allow us to visualize everything as a bar chart. Each number is going to represent a single value in the bar chart. Now, the next thing we need to do is, so maybe we can actually give this a name here and say data set. Let's go on and create up an SVG container dimensions. And here we're going to be setting up basically the SVG container where the chart is going to be drawn at. And so we need to define a couple things. We need the SVG width. Okay, and I'm going to just set this to 500. We want the bar height. Okay, I'm just going to set this to 20 for now. And then I'm going to set a bar margin here, and I'm going to set this to 1. And so this, I'm just making it a bar margin just 1 all the way around. You could make this so that it has something different for each top, side, bottom, etc. But right now we're just going to do 1 to make it simple. And let's also do a const here, SVG, and this is going to be our height. Oops, and I need to spell height correctly here, and this is actually going to be a function of our bar height multiplied by our bar margin. And then we're going to multiply in here data dot length, so that, again, as, for example, as this data, maybe we add in more, maybe we add in less, this will make this SVG height dynamic. So the next thing we want to do is to go on and initialize our SVG container. And so again, this should be relatively straightforward with what we have, but we're going to do this by setting up our SVG is equal to D3 dot select here, and we're going to be selecting the body. We want to append an SVG. And then we are going to add in our attributes here of the width, and it's going to be the SVG width. And then we're going to do the same thing here for the height. And what we're going to do here, though, is we're going to add in 30 in here to give a little bit of extra space for the x-axis. So adding space for x-axis. Okay, so it's going to make it just a little bit wider than what we would want it to be, so about an extra 30 pixels. So after this, we want to create up the linear scaling. So our linear scale for the x-axis. So let's go and create up a const of x scale, d3 dot scale linear. And then we need to add in a domain in here, and this is going to be from 0 to d3 dot max of our data. Then we're going to do the same thing for the range here, and the range, though, we're going to set it at 50 with our SVG here, our width minus 10. And so what's going on here is this scale function is going to map up our data values to the SVG container. And then this scale linear here creates up a linear mapping, and the domain is going to represent the input values from 0 to the max value of our data set. And the range is going to represent the output values, where the bars will actually be positioned in the SVG chart. So, and we're doing this, we're adjusting to start at 50 with the SVG of width of minus 10 here, so minus those 10 pixels. Then the next portion that we're going to do here is create our bar and labels, and eventually we would also want to maybe add in hover as well. So tooltips. So we can say tooltips. Okay. So, and let me zoom in just a little bit for you as well. So let's go on and start this. So we're going to basically want to iterate over each data point and creating a group element for each bar and label. So we'll do data.for each. Okay, and so basically this is creating up, a for each loop here. And so what we'll do here is we want D and I. So we basically want the data itself, and we actually want what its location may be. And then we are going to have it loop over in here. This would be our code to create and position bars and labels. Okay, so let's go on and do that. So the first thing that we're going to want to do, again, we're creating up basically a group. So let's do const group is equal to svg dot append g. So we're adding in this group. Okay, and let's go on and add an attribute here to transform. And let's go on and translate. And this is going to be a little bit different than what we've done in previous iterations, but I thought it would be nice to use more newer, newer types of analysis. So we're going to translate from 50, and then we want what here? The data itself multiplied by the bar height plus the bar margin. Okay, and maybe you can zoom out just a little bit so you can see everything there. And then the next thing we're going to do here, we've initialized the group. So then now let's actually do group, and let's add in our bars. So we want to append in here a rectangle. And let's have an attribute here of the width at 0. Now, what this does, this here starts with width of 0 for transition. Okay, so this is going to make it so that they start at 0, they're kind of empty, and all of a sudden they'll pop up all the way to their full size. So let's do attribute now of height, and again, this needs to be the bar height minus the bar margin. Then we're going to want to fill this with a steel blue. Oh, and here this is height. Then the next thing, we're going to add in a transition in here, and let's make that duration, and here maybe just 1 second. And then let's add in our attribute of the width. And now it needs to be our X scale at D. And let's do minus 50 in here. Now, what's happening here is we are adjusting the width based on the calculation. So adjusted width calculation. Okay, so again here, if we have this somewhere around here, we have this 50. Okay, we need to adjust it so that it actually looks correctly later on. All right, so that gives us the rectangle that we are so desiring. Okay, and we should technically, whoops, if we grab our terminal here and we go on and run a server, and we go over here, and let me refresh this. We're not seeing anything right now, okay, but here in a little bit we should be able to. And again, actually, we should, based on our code, we should be seeing something. So let's see if there's an error really quickly before we move any further. All right, and it says here that we have an error, anonymous, at 35 and at 25. So we need to kind of see. My guess is it's this 35 that's having an error here. So let's go to 35. Oh, and notice here I forgot to put a dot here. So that's going to probably mess it up. Let's now refresh. All right, and so notice, great, we have our bar chart. It is currently working. It does not have, oops, it doesn't have any numbers. It doesn't have any axes, but you can see here now, because we have this 50, it is now moved away from the edge of the browser window. So it's moved out a little bit. So now let's go on and add in our text. So we can do group.append text. So now we have our attribute here. We want our X, and we want our X scale at D. And here we want it to be kind of like on top of the bar. So it would be, instead of just minus 50, let's maybe minus 53. We may need to change it to maybe 54 or 55, depending on how we want it to look. And then we want another attribute for our Y here, and it's going to be our bar height divided by 2. Then let's do another attribute here for our dy, and this is going to be for the basically the text size on here, and we want it to be 0.35 em. And we also want to anchor this to be at the end of our text. So again, you have a text box, and you want it to be at the end of that section, and so we'll put it at the end. Then let's also now add in the text of D. So if we do that and we refresh, all right, so now we have, and you can see here that it's kind of at the end. Maybe we want it to be a little bit more to the left, maybe we want it to be a little bit more to the right. You can see here that it's kind of been cut off. Okay, so we may want to play with that a little bit. So let's see what happens if we add, maybe just put this at 50 for a second. All right, and so that looks a little bit better. Maybe we actually want it to be closer. So let's do something like 47 instead. Yeah, so all right, so maybe let's put it at 40. Oh, that's not quite what we're wanting. We're pushing it in the wrong direction there. So let's maybe, just for fun, let's put it at 60. And again, this may take you a little bit of playing to find exactly where you want it to be. So let's maybe do it at 65. Okay, and I'm going to go on and put it back at our 53 for now, just so that it's kind of at the end. And if we have time, we'll play with it a little bit later on, just to see how it'll look. Now, the next thing that we want to move on to is to actually add in these hover effects. Okay, so again, we've wanted it so that this will change color whenever we're inside there. So we can go on and do that as well since we're here. And that we'll be adding in to our group, and we'll do group.on mouse over here, and we will do, oops, here's something like D3.select this dot select rectangle dot attribute here, and we can fill with some color, and I'll use fire brick. For now, you could do some other color as well if you want to. Then afterwards, oops, this needs to be right here. There we go. This needs to all be inside of this on, okay? So then now we can do on mouse out. Here we can put in a nice function here. And again, we want this to say something along the same line. So D3.select this dot select rectangle, and then again here atter fill, and I believe it was steel blue is what it had. So now let's go on and make sure that this interactivity is working now. Oh, not quite. Oops. So let's see what happened here. There should be, let's see here, mouse over, group.on, mouse over, function this red brick. Or fire brick. Oh, maybe it doesn't, what, does it not like, does that not the, let's try orange real quick just to see if that's what's making a fuss real quick, and I don't think it is though. No, it's not. And again, if we were paying attention, we can see, actually I see it right here, this is silly, I have a misspelled word in there, and we can go through and let's double check and see if we have any other issues. So let's go in and look at our thing here, and you can see here that it has a ton of issues, but let's actually see what it is struggling with here. So this query selector is not a function, so we may be wanting to change this up a little bit here. So let me go on and cut this out for a second, and let me put this back in there, and let's actually try doing function, and let's make an anonymous function here. And let's do our D3.select this dot select dot attribute dot fill fire brick. All right, and now let's actually just get rid of that for a second. Go over here, refresh. And notice now they actually do it. Okay, so it wasn't liking the arrow function for that instance, and that's okay. So the next thing we'll do is go on and fix this up, and we'll do mouse out. And here, I'm just going to go on and copy this, paste it inside, and this is mouse out, and this is now steel blue. All right, so let's refresh. All right, and now we have that nice interactivity that we were wanting. Perfect. Then let's go on and take a look at adding in the last portion of this, and that is to go on and add in the x-axis at the bottom. So let's do const x-axis is equal to d3.axis bottom x scale here, and we'll do ticks. Here we want 5, let's do 5 ticks. And here we are defining the x-axis. SVG dot append G, and here we need to actually do the attribute transform, translate here 0, comma our SVG height. And this is basically, what this is doing is this is positioning it at the bottom. Dot call x axis. And now we should be able to refresh. And now we see here that we have a nice looking SVG. It is at the bottom. And again, maybe we can edit it up a little bit to clean it up. So let's maybe go on and give that a try. All right, so like we said, we want to kind of clean this up, because right now you notice here that this line here isn't quite where we want it to be. And these pieces here are nothing quite looks just the way that we would maybe want it to. So let's kind of go through this line by line and just kind of see where we could make some adjustments to make this just look just a little bit better. So we have in here our SVG, okay, creation, and our domain and our creation of our container. Nothing there should be needed to change, because again, it's just talking about our container. Now, we also may want to double check on our initialization of our container here. So here, again, we're initializing our container. We are having in here our width. And again, here we're adding in space for our x-axis. And so technically, let me also add in some notes in here. And this is adjusted height to accommodate the x-axis, okay? And so that's what we're doing here. So that shouldn't need to change either, okay? Now, let's go on down here to our linear model here, and we see here that we have our linear, all of our D3s, and again, here we're just working with that x-axis. So we may want to think about this. So again, here what we are doing is we are adjusting the range to ensure the axis fits within the SVG, okay? And again, this is our 0, this is our 50 mark range, which all looks good. So then maybe let's look and see if there's somewhere inside here, maybe with our translations, that we may want to add a little bit of change. Okay, so we have in here our attribute. All right, we have our transformation. We are translating it to 50 with I multiplied by our bar height plus our bar margin. Everything looks good there. And so again, what's happening with this particular line here is we are going through here and we are adjusting the translation to start from 50. Okay, so that you guys can kind of see that there. Then the next portion here is going to be creating up our rectangles. So maybe there's something that we need to change with our rectangles. All right, so we have our rectangle. We have our start with 0 from our transition. We are, let me move it down just a little bit here. We have our rectangle. We are adding in our width. We are starting at 0 for the transition. Here we have our height. We have our bar height, our bar margin, and we have our fill and our steel. We have our transition. We're transitioning to 1000. Good. We have our adjustment here for our width calculation. Now we have our text. Okay, so we have X, we have our X scaled. We're going to, here, this should be for adjusted to align text inside the bar. All right, so maybe here is somewhere where we would want to change something. Then we have our bar height divided by 2. We have our d of y with our 35. We have our, whoops, this may be another thing here, anchor, okay, to the end. So here we had a misspelling for our anchor tag. All right, and that may have changed some things. So let's go on and go over here and refresh. Now doesn't that look a lot better? Okay, so right here, this is why it's important to kind of go over your code, because this did not create up any error in there, okay? So, watch out for spelling mistakes. Okay, this is kind of showing you guys why code review is really important. There are these small issues where they may change kind of dramatically how things look within your code. Okay, great. So now we need to still fix this underlying issue here with our x-axis being a little bit too high. So none of this from our mouse over is going to cause any issues with that. So we need to probably go over and double check here at the bottom here and double check that everything is going the way we want it to. So we have our x-axis that we are creating with our D3 axis bottom at our x scale with our ticks, and we want 5 ticks. And again, here I can maybe show you guys what happens. Let's say if I add 10 ticks. So this is what it looks like before. If I refresh, notice now we have 10 tick marks instead of 5. And again, so you guys could play with that any way that you would want to. Now, finally here, we have our SVG append G. And we have our transformation. We have our translation of 0. And we have our SVG height. And then we are calling our x-axis. So upon some quick review, one thing that I should note here is that we actually also have a mistake here, and this should be a plus, okay, for our height, okay, instead of a multiply, because again, what we're doing here, if we have multiply, well, remember, this is 1, okay? 1 multiplied by our bar height does not give us an actual margin. This needs to be a plus in here, and that gives us what we are looking at here, and that is our nice line that we have. Okay, it took me a few minutes to actually figure out what I did wrong. But again, that's what part of this is all for. So again, fixing that issue was again just a plus sign. And again, even upon whenever I was reviewing the code, some of you were probably screaming at me, that's a multiplication sign, not a plus sign. But that's kind of how the cookie crumbles with this. So now you guys have a nice example to be able to add in a x-axis with a bar chart. And again, I hope this is useful to you guys and you enjoy this content. If you do, comment, subscribe, and hit that like button. I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.